I don't suppose the name Antakya will mean much to you. Why should it? Well, here we are. It's a small Turkish city of less than 200,000 people, squashed in a corner of the country between Syria and the sea. But if I say Antioch, well, now we're talking a whole new ball game. Suddenly it's the New Testament, the Crusades, and of course one of the most important cities in the Roman Empire. For over 1,000 years, Antioch was the jewel of the East. At its height, it's estimated more than 350,000 people lived here. It was famous as a political and cultural centre, and also for its sense of fun. Folks round here knew how to party. Ah, the magical sound of water, and it looks idyllic. Well, as we all know, looks can be deceiving, and I'm in a state of shock, to be honest, because it's my first time here. And this is what's become of one of the most notorious pleasure spots in the ancient world, the Grove of Apollo at Daphne. Ay, ay, ay. Back then, this was an important religious site with temples and gardens. People would come from the city to pray and play. Oh yes, it's not birds you'd hear in the bushes on a steamy Saturday night in the 100s AD. Daphne was a girl who liked a good time. With all that pagan partying, it's no wonder Antioch attracted the earliest Christian missionaries, no less than St. Peter and St. Paul in person. This church is where some of the earliest converts to Christianity worshipped. It's actually a cave where they met in secret, and its importance is spelt out in the book of Acts, which says it was at Antioch that the disciples were first called Christians. In some ways, it's where Christianity begins. And once it took root, there was no getting rid of it. By the 6th century, people around here were just as passionate about Christianity as they'd been about paganism. Now here's irony for you. 500 years on, those Antiochenes who've been fumbling in the bushes at Daphne are marching 18 kilometres out of the city to pay their respects and pray to a Christian holy man who spent 25 years chained to the top of a pillar. These are the ruins of the monastery that was built in his name. St. Simeon, who was known as Stylites, the pillar sitter. And this is the base of the pillar on which he sat for all those years. It was 13 metres high. Now, Simeon didn't start the trend for pillar sitting, but he certainly boosted its popularity, because eventually around 250 of his followers mounted pillars of their own across the Middle East. The Christian significance of Antioch wasn't lost on the European knights who pulled up here during the First Crusade. Of course, they were en route to Jerusalem to wrest the city from the infidel. And even though they'd been on the road for well over a year, they sat down to besiege Antioch. It would take 9 months. The main problem was that Antioch was superbly defended. The city walls were 25 miles long and had recently been strengthened. On and on they ran along the slopes of Mount Silpius in a huge loop. This was one siege where success would depend on an inside job. And Firuz the guard was the guy to pull it off. He'd fallen out with the Turkish ruler of Antioch. So on the night of June 2nd, 1098, he opened the city gates to the Crusaders. The starving inhabitants of Antioch were massacred. What to do after a bloody massacre, eh? Well, as my own mother would probably say, cheer yourself up with a bit of shopping. Antakya's bazaar is one of the oldest in Turkey, built in the mid-15th century. The layout hasn't changed since then, and parts of it are 1,000 years old. Some things haven't changed much since the Middle Ages. All the same kinds of shops clumped together in the one area. And here, everything you ever wanted, or didn't want, in the wonderful world of shoes. Hang on, let me in. Time. This guy is making the dessert that Antakya is most famous for. It's called künefe, and basically you see these strings of really, really fine pastry. These will be found with cheese and syrup and sugar, baked in the oven, and then when it comes out you eat it hot. I haven't tried it yet, but I'm told it's çok güzel. Very, very good. It's famous soap from from the Grove, definitely, with the water. Yeah. I've been there. I think I trust the soap from there. Well, I left the bazaar empty-handed, but I did manage to track down some künefe. This is the stuff I saw being made earlier. So, oh wow, that is fantastic. Oh, really chewy, really sweet. Well worth it. I didn't buy anything else. I've done enough of these trips to know when to buy and when not to buy. How often have I gone home with something I don't need? This, on the other hand, very tasty. Great.